Good afternoon. Back with another card review, this time doing Redhorn Gate and Road to Rivendell together, because I don't think you can talk about one without talking about the other due to the buffs that the two heroes give to each other. So let's get started. Redhorn Gate first. Hero is LOTR. Noldor, Noble Ranger. 10 threat, 2/2/1, 4 health. While Eladin is in play, LOTR gets +2 shields. After LOTR is declared as a defender, pay 1 resource from his resource pool to ready him. Okay, so this card is intended as a defender. The current defender we're running in our dwarf deck is Dane Ironfoot. He also has 3 shields, but he has 5 HP, but can only defend 1 attack per turn. LOTR is better in the short term. Dane is better in the long term when you analyze their role purely as a defender. The reason is because yes, LOTR can defend 2 attacks in 1 turn, which is good. However, less HP means functionally you're only going to be able to defend 2, maybe 3, 4 attacks before she's done. So if you're facing a lot of small enemies that are all attacking for 3 or less, LOTR is going to be a better defender than Dane. But if you're facing attacks which spill over, and often you are, I'd say every quest now we're facing attacks at some point, a 4 attack or more. Well, if you face enough of those, Dane's better because he can take more of them because of his larger HP. If you stick an item on them, so let's say Citadel Plate is better on LOTR than it is on Dane because you can take multiple attacks per turn. 1 resource is a big cost to pay. It's a big cost to pay. I value 1 resource as equivalent to 2 threat. Would you pay 2 threat per attack to defend? Yeah, sometimes, but I would say this has a limited number of uses per game because of the 1 resource cost and the HP pool, generally speaking. And so while at first glance it seems like unlimited defenses per turn is exceptional, in practice what it turns out is you'll get 2 defenses maybe once or twice a game. So my evaluation of this card when paired with Eladin is that it's better than Dane in the short term, worse in the long term, slightly. Compared to our non-dwarf defender, Frodo Baggins, Frodo's better. Because of his ability to tank bigger attacks, so this champion would be good against a lot of small attacks if you have the resources to pay for it, but Frodo is better against large attacks, and he costs threat to pay for it. He converts threat into a resource. So tanking a troll, Frodo's better. Tanking some small orcs when you have resources, LOTR is better. But it is a high cost to pay 1 resource per attack. It doesn't seem like it, but it adds up fast, especially if you're running with Eladin, who also pays 1 resource per use. So I think I would rank this defender as 3rd, Frodo being the best, Dane being a little bit better as a defender in more situations, but it's close depending on the quest. LOTR could be better when paired with Eladin. Yep. It's a fun card though. It's a fun card. It opens interesting possibilities. It makes you think about the game in different ways. But your Eladin LOTR combo is not going to be better than your dwarves. And debatably not better than your Boromir, Frodo, Gimli play that we were playing from the last cycle. But it's fun. It's fun to mess around with. I enjoyed experimenting with the card. And it's very close to good. Very close to good. Very, very, very close. Taking initiative. Discard the top card of your deck if the discarded card's printed cost is equal to or higher than the number of characters you control. Draw 2 cards and deal 2 damage to any enemy. So it rewards high cost decks. Well, high cost decks are cumbersome. So practically you're going to be playing a few high cost cards and you hope to get lucky with this card, and otherwise it does nothing. It's a very powerful effect if it does something. It's going to be inconsistent and it's going to increase the swinginess of your deck. Because when it goes off it's exceptional, otherwise it does nothing. It's 0 cost, that's good. You're going to gamble. At least it doesn't cost resources. It could be fun. It could also be kind of embarrassing in a group setting if you're playing 3 of these and none of them go off and people are like, why are you playing that? So I wouldn't play it. I don't like cards that are really gambly in general. Unless I have to. Or unless it's really the optimal strategy. But in this case, there's better cards that are, well, there are more consistent cards to play than this if you want card draw. Or you want, well, damage is hard to come by, direct damage. But if you want card draw, there's much better cards that are more consistent. Timely Aid. So this introduces a new concept called secrecy. Secrecy means you subtract the number next to the secrecy text if your threat is less than 20. And functionally, it means you have to play only 2 heroes, and they have to be low threat heroes. And I have yet to see a deck or a card that really clicked for me and said, okay, yeah, secrecy is good. It's an interesting idea, and maybe it becomes good. I just haven't seen it yet. I'd like to, though. I always like to learn new ways to play or new concepts. But this particular card, you reveal the top 5 cards of your deck and put 1 revealed ally into play. That can be amazing, but not at 4 cost. At 4 cost, you're probably going to be paying more than the ally would have cost anyway, so it's basically draw 1 card. Draw 1 card, I'd value it like 1 resource. 1 resource would be maybe a little bit below average. 2 cards for 1 resource would be good. For this, you're only drawing 1 card. So let's say we value that at half a resource. That means on average, the ally needs to cost more than 3.5 to make this card worth it if you're not playing secrecy, and that's not going to happen a lot. So this isn't good without secrecy, and it doesn't make secrecy good on its own. At 1 cost, it's basically gain 1.5 to 2.5 resources probably, and sometimes do nothing if the top 5 cards aren't allies. Usually there will be one. So probably on average in a secrecy deck, this could functionally read draw a card and play a card which is worth, I would value that at about 3 resources. Maybe 2, depending on how lucky you get. 2 to 3 resources. So you are saving yourself 1 to 2 resources with this card, which is good, but it's not like, okay, this makes the concept amazing, or even good, or even viable. Unseen Strike. Choose a character you control until the end of the phase. That character gets +3 while attacking an enemy with higher engagement cost than your threat. That's niche. Niche cards are inconsistent and swingy, and therefore we want to play cards when possible that are consistent. I would rather have +2 attack that works all the time than +3 that doesn't work all the time. The good thing is typically when you're facing an enemy with higher threat, you really do need the +3 attack. But that's too specific, too niche to run this in a lot of decks. Keeping count. Attached to a hero, limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gets +1 for each resource token on another copy of keeping count that is above the current number of resource tokens on this card. What? Okay. After attached hero attacks and destroys an enemy. Whoa. That attacks and destroys an enemy. That's hard to activate. So you need 2 copies of this in play, and you need to attack and destroy enemies. A lot of the quests we've seen so far in solo play, we're just trying to run through before some boulder of doom that's chasing us catches us, like the threat increase from Gollum and Return to Mirkwood, or a pile up of enemies or something. So slow cards are not good in solo play unless they really escalate into the late game. And this doesn't do that because it doesn't activate enough, because you're not going to be destroying enough enemies. So it's not good in solo. I don't think it's good in multiplayer either because it's slow. It's kind of interesting though. It could be powerful in some scenarios, but okay, so the attack bonus goes theoretically as high as you want. We've already got a way of powering up a hero, which is Gimli, by putting Citadel Plate on him. And that happens quickly, like 1 or 2 turns. This is going to be way slower. And best case scenario, you get probably to 4 or 5 maybe. I mean, that's really unlikely because it's only after attached hero attacks. If it was any hero, then we'd be having a conversation. But as it is, it's way too slow. And there are better options available that are faster to accomplish the same objective, which is to defeat a high shields or high health enemy. Next up, we got spirit cards. Boffer, 3 costs, 2/1/1, 3 health. Spend 1 resource, spirit resource, to put Boffer into play from your hand, exhausted and committed to a quest. If you quest successfully this phase and Boffer is still in play, return him to your hand. Okay. So it helps with one of the dwarves' weaknesses, which is questing. I'll stick this in my deck. I don't think I want to replace a non-spirit card, because I'm already getting a little bogged down with spirit cards when I don't draw Song of Travel. So I'll probably remove Untroubled by Darkness for this. And I expect it to be a little bit better than Untroubled by Darkness. In my playtesting, I got 1 use out of that card that was good, but the rest of the time it just sat there. I expect this to be a little better, but not phenomenal. 1 resource is a high cost. It doesn't seem like it, but as I said with Elro here, 1 resource is a high cost for a non-permanent effect. It's got to do something. I mean, you look at what we pay 1 for typically for non-permanent effects, and you think about a Test of Will. That card saves you from a loss sometimes. Saves you from a hero dying or some horrible treachery effect. Usually if we're going to pay resources, we want a permanent effect. And if it's not going to be permanent, then we want the effect to be phenomenal, really worth the resources. And 3 questing power for 1 resource can be powerful. Not powerful, it can be above average. I'll take it, I'll play it, but it's not like an essential or phenomenal card. We haven't seen one of those in this AP yet. We've seen fun. Elro here and Elodan are fun. But we haven't seen anything that says, okay, I must buy this AP for these cards. Or, okay, this card is going to unlock new strategies for me that are powerful. Nothing like that yet. Renewed Friendship. After another player plays an attachment on a hero you control, you may choose one. Ready one of that player's heroes. Have that player draw 1 card or lower that player's threat by 2. Readying one of the heroes can be very powerful. Obviously, this is garbage in solo. And in multiplayer, it's too niche to get a lot of use out of, so there are other better cards, but it's a fun card to play. You know, if you're playing with friends or younger siblings or whatever, it's probably fun in a deck like that to kind of encourage them to play as a team and use teamwork. you know, like if you're playing with a younger brother or something like that. But I wouldn't run it in a serious deck because there are, I mean, obviously, ready one of that player's heroes, you play Unexpected Courage. It costs 2, but it's such a phenomenal attachment. And would you ever play Unexpected Courage and this card? 6 slots. Drawing 1 card's okay. Draw 1 card, discard 1 card, which is this card. That's a cycle card. Lower threat by 2. I'd rather have 3 if I'm playing a card just for that. So I think readying a hero is the strongest effect, and there are better ways to do that. But it's kind of a cute effect, and you might play it for fun. Rivendell Scout. 3 cost, 0/1/1/3 health. Exhaust Rivendell Scout to move up to 2 progress tokens from one location to another. So that's if you mess up and accidentally put progress tokens on the wrong location. I don't know of any card that places progress tokens randomly. So that's like an, oh no, I messed up card. Unless you want to move progress tokens from an active location to one in the staging area to avoid a travel effect. That's not, it's only 2 though. So you'd have to do it over multiple turns for the nasty locations. It's too slow, too niche, too overcosted for the stats. I wouldn't play it. Needful to know. Secrecy 2, so it can be free. Raise your threat by 1 to look at the top card of the encounter deck, then reduce your threat by X, where X is the threat of the card. When I'm doing math in my head, I usually figure 2 threat per card coming off the encounter deck. So I would figure raise your threat by 1 to reduce your threat by 2, sometimes by 3, sometimes by none. That's not good for a card, for 1 card. To reduce your threat by 1, that's not good. That's not worth a card. Even if it was free all the time, I wouldn't play this. Well, I mean, looking at the top card of the encounter deck can be good sometimes. Maybe if it was free, I would play it, or would at least consider it in some quests where you really need to look at the top card of the deck. Yeah, it would be good then. So in a secrecy deck, where you are needing to look at the top card of the encounter deck anyway, this might be worth a slot. It isn't worth a slot at 2 cost, though. That's expensive for a non-permanent effect. Yeah, much too expensive. Denethor does this for free every turn, looks at the top card, and reducing your threat by 2 isn't worth 0 cost, let alone 2 cost. Together, those effects I would value at 1 card with 0 cost. So with the secrecy too, yeah, it's got a niche use, enough use to use perhaps in a secrecy deck where you need to look at the top card of the encounter deck. It can help you get a faster win or a easier win. But that's it. Last card of Redhorn Gate, Good Meal. Attached to a Hobbit hero, discard Good Meal to lower the cost of the next event you play this round that matches attached hero sphere by 2. Good card when you're drawing cards. Doesn't scale well into the late game. Typically you have enough resources in the late game. So if you're playing a deck with no card draw, don't run this. If you're playing a deck with card draw and you have a Hobbit hero, depends on how much card draw you have and how reliably. Say if you're playing Barivor or Bilbo, this would be good with Bilbo. I'd like it with Bilbo. It would have to be a lore event, though. This would be better with spirit events, so it'd be better on Frodo. But Frodo doesn't draw cards. So, yeah, it's kind of a, like, if you're playing Frodo and you also have card draw, would you play this? Yeah, I think so. I think you would. But without card draw, because it doesn't scale up well, I wouldn't play it. We're on to Road to Rivendell expansion. First card, Eladan. It's the attack version of Elro here. 10 threat, 2/1/2, +2 while Elro here is in play. I don't think you play it unless Elro here is in play. I don't think you play Elro here unless Eladan is in play. So it fills the same role as Boromir. After Illidan is declared as an attacker, pay 1 to ready him. Boromir costs 1 threat. 1 threat I would value at half of a resource, which means Boromir is cheaper, but can only be used twice, and Illidan can be used an infinite amount. You don't usually need more than 2 times. It's rare that you do. So Boromir's better, because his effect is cheaper. 1 threat is cheaper than 1 resource. The Noldor part of this card could make it better. I mean, Boromir's Gondor, so we'll see which trait gets better synergy, Noldor or Gondor. This could elevate him past Boromir with good synergy, but at its base, Boromir's better than this. And Elro here is better in the short term than Dane, a little bit worse long term, depending on what items you put on them. And better against smaller enemies than Frodo, worse against larger. Together, not enough benefit to justify playing them over Frodo and Boromir or over a dwarf deck, but they're close. They're very close. I think they were designed to be different but not better, and if that's the case, the designers succeeded almost perfectly. They're different, just slightly worse than existing options, but they're fun, and fun is good. With an option for synergy later, I think. Dunedain Wanderer. 5 cost, secrecy 3, 1/2/2, 2 health. Way too expensive without secrecy. With secrecy, it's a 2 cost 1/2/2 with ranged and sentinel. I think you'd run this in the secrecy deck if such a thing exists. Right now, it seems just like a fun concept to me, so good fun card. I guess that's the theme of both these APs. They're just fun. On to the next card. May come back to these secrecy cards if the concept becomes more viable or more interesting in the future. So far, the secrecy looks like a standard deck just running sub 20. It's like sub 20 threat. It's not. Seems like it makes it harder on you so far with these 3 cards, and there's nothing that really makes up for that increased difficulty. Yeah, so far. Lure of Moria. 3 cost, ready all dwarf characters. Phenomenal card. Really increases the power of a dwarf deck. There's a 5 cost card right now in leadership that readies all characters. This is ready all dwarf characters. However, in dwarf decks, you're going to be running almost all dwarf characters. If you're playing in a fellowship like 2, 3, 4 players that are running dwarves, wow, is this good. Just straight up wins games. Even in solo play, this is really good. I'll throw it in my deck. Probably I'll run Boffer instead of Untroubled by Darkness against Redhorn Gate. Then against Road to Rivendell, I'll swap in Lure of Moria instead of Boffer because it's leadership instead of Spirit. And it allows questing and then attacking. It's really, really good. Really good. This is what you want out of a non-permanent effect. Extra action for a turn for all your characters. Not just allies, not just heroes, all characters. Really good card. Should probably be in every dwarf deck. If you are running leadership at all. Rivendell Blade, attached to Noldor or Sylvan character. So maybe this is going to explain why Illidan is a little bit weaker. When attached character attacks an enemy, that enemy gets -2 shields until the end of the phase. Does that explain why the twins are a little bit weaker than existing options? You stick this on Illidan, he becomes better than Boromir, no question about that, against smaller enemies. and the attached character loses those shields against other players as well. If you're running Eladan or Elro here, if you're running Noldor characters and you're running tactics, at one cost you're putting this in your deck, I think. It's good against small enemies. It's good against large enemies. It's just good. It's not game-changing good. Okay, so does that make Eladan better than Boromir? Yes, with the caveat that you need to have this in your opening hand, or it's going to make him a little bit worse because he's more expensive in the early game. And then better later when you get Rivendell Blade on him. Interesting. However, you have to play Elro here, who is a, in my opinion, lackluster defender because of the 4 HP. So you do get a stronger character with the Rivendell Blade, but a weaker defender. Well balanced cards. Good job, designers. Makes very, very interesting decisions in deck designing. I prefer consistency over kind of swinginess, like, oh no, I didn't draw Rivendell Blade and I don't have a resource so I can't use this. Whereas Boromir you can almost always use in nearly every situation I found. I prefer that personally, however, this would be fun to mess with. The twins with Rivendell Blade, it'd be fun. Be swingy. Be fun. Good design. Good design if you're not trying for a straight upgrade, which I don't think they were. Hail of Stones. 1 cost, exhaust X characters to deal X damage to an enemy in the staging area. Good in the event that you have small characters not doing a lot, and you've got a big guy in the staging area you don't want coming in. Too niche, though. You're generally not playing characters that you have no use for. And 1 damage isn't going to be better than whatever use you had in mind for them. Which is usually questing, or if not questing, chump blocking. Or if not chump blocking, some unique effect. So the effect is useful. It's overshadowed by what you were probably already planning on doing with those characters before you saw this card. Rider of the Mark. 3 costs, 2/1/1, 2 health. Spend 1 spirit resource to give control of Rider of the Mark to another player. After it changes control, discard a shadow card dealt to an enemy you are engaged with. Interesting. The spending 1 resource I don't like. That's expensive. Limit once per round, of course. It's fun. It's cumbersome. It's expensive. It doesn't cancel a shadow effect. It just discards a shadow card, a card which might do nothing. So it's overcosted for what it does and for its stats. The 2 questing is nice, though. Obviously, it does nothing in solo. It's interesting in a fun way, not a good way. If it canceled a shadow effect after it changed control, that would be worth playing in multiplayer. Yep. But discarding a shadow card, which might possibly be doing nothing, reduces its value. So it's overcosted. I mean, Hasty Stroke costs 1, and it just cancels a shadow effect. So, Song of Erendil. Attached to a spirit hero. After song enters play, draw 1 card. After another player raises his threat, raise your threat by 1 to reduce that player's threat by 1. So you tank threat for someone. It cycles itself. Most of the time, players design decks intending to be able to manage their own threat. So this is good in the event that you're trying to carry a weaker player in terms of deck design. I mean, I don't know if it's good in that situation. It has a use at least. It's not a good card. It's another one of these like, hey, teamwork makes the dream work cards. But I wouldn't play it seriously. Bomber, 3 cost, 0/0/1, 3 health. Exhaust Bomber to choose a location. That location gets -1 threat. If you used it every turn and he reduced threat by every turn, every single turn, or it doesn't contribute at all if it's underground. Would it be good if you used it every turn? For 1 threat. Well, it costs 3. I think you'd have to use it like 4, 5, 6 turns probably. Probably 6 turns to get good value. And that's not going to happen much, so it'd be a 1/1 with Dane, but you have to exhaust him. It's not a free action. If it was a free action, even if it was free, no cost, I still think it would take too long to get full benefit. And it's unique. I don't like unique cards. You can only run 2 or 3 of them, otherwise you're clogging up your hand, or you're running 1 off, which means it doesn't come into play much. So it's overcosted, and you have to exhaust him, which is bad. I don't like it. Out of the Wild. Secrecy 2, search the top 5 cards of encounter deck for any one non-objective card worth no victory points and add it to your victory display. So you could remove a nasty enemy or something from the encounter deck if it doesn't have victory points. Interesting. What possibilities do we have for this? Secrecy 2 costs 3. 3 is expensive, but you could save yourself a loss if you remove the right card. At 1 cost, I think this is good. This is good in a Secrecy deck. Once again, it doesn't make Secrecy viable, but it's good in a Secrecy deck. I like it. At 3 costs, that's expensive. It's not always going to save you a win. Forest Snare would probably do the same thing, and in more situations. So would you run this and Forest Snare? No, you wouldn't, I don't think. But in Secrecy, yeah, it's fun in Secrecy, I think. At least worth a spot in Secrecy. Could win you a game every now and then. The end comes. 0 cost. After a dwarf character leaves play, shuffle the encounter discard pile back into the encounter deck. What? Why would you ever want to do that? After a dwarf character leaves play. So sometimes you're going to be shuffling back into the encounter deck whatever just killed your dwarf character. That seems the opposite of what you want. Unless it was, I mean, sometimes it'll get killed by an enemy on the table. But a lot of times it's going to be a treachery that killed you, and then you're like, oh, hey, I want to see that card again. Let's shuffle it back into the encounter deck. Why? The only conceivable use I can find for this is if you've lost an objective to the discard pile and you need it back. But even so, you have to wait until a dwarf character dies. This is flat out garbage unless I'm missing something. Wow. I guess that's a card you play if you're playing with your friends and you're like super depressed or something, and or you want your friends to like wonder if you've had a traumatic brain injury, or you want to just flat out troll them, like one of their dwarf characters dies and they're sad and you're like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna see if I can kill another one of your characters later. don't know why that card exists. Alright, so Redhorn Gate has no exceptional cards. You buy it if you want to play Elro and Eladan that are a fun combination but a little bit swingier than options that currently exist. But you might buy Road to Rivendell even if you don't plan on playing Eladan and Elro here, because Lure of Moria is super good. And Rivendell Blade is going to be good too in the future on your damage dealer. Alright. Thanks for watching. Let me know if anybody finds a good Eladan Elro deck that's legit better than currently available options, because they're fun. I enjoyed messing around with them. I was a little bit sad to find them a little less good than what we already have, but they're fun. Thanks for watching.